Hey folks, BlackCross here, and welcome back to a different kind of video. Completely different than what I have been doing so far. This is something that I actually been thinking about, but it didn't really become a manifestation video that I wanted to talk about until a particular YouTuber by the name of the Happy Console Gamer. He did a video talking about his ideal game, his dream game, if you will. And basically the way he synopsed it was that if you had an infinite budget, if a developer gave you infinite budget, be like, create something. What would you create? And, you know, his ideal was more towards based on programming rather than the ideal game itself. You know, what is the ideal game, you know? It's one thing to be like, oh yeah, this is what I hope to see in the upcoming years and stuff like that. That's one thing, but what about the core game itself? Like, what is the core game that you would want? And for me, I actually have that dream game ideal. And technically, I almost got it. I almost got it in the form of Elden Ring. Elden Ring was by far the best game that came out this year. And it literally still is to this day. And I'll get to that as we go into the video, of course. But it almost came close, and I say almost because there was a few things about Elden Ring that was more, not so much problematic, but so much what they could have done more with, you know? I'm sure the creative team did the best they could, but I feel like they could probably do more, you know? They could do more. And they did more to a certain degree, but not in terms of creative designs, if you will, you know what I mean? So what I want to do is that I want to give my dream game ideal, and I'm going to be taking ideals from different video games that I have played over the years. Obviously one of them being Elden Ring, but another one is a game called Blood Would Tell, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But then also too, in terms of creative designs, probably bring out Kingdom Hearts while we're at it, you know? So, you might be asking yourself, okay, well, what is this dream game that you've got? What is this dream game that you're talking about? Well, the dream game is more based on the ideology of a knight, you know? I mean, we've played a lot of medieval games and stuff like that that surrounds fantasy genre and everything of that nature. And that's cool. It's cool the fact that we have an overarching expansion into the fantasy genre, which is cool. I absolutely love that. But we often come close. We come close to what I want in a video game. What I want. And what I want is this. Is to fully explore an entire castle. An entire fantasy genre castle. Not modern day or realistic castles and stuff like that. Because really, when you look at them, they're kind of... I mean, they're overscale admittedly, but they're not as, like, grandiose compared to, like, say, Lord of the Rings or stuff of that nature, you know? I want to be able to explore every square inch of this entire kingdom and be able to explore it. And we've often come close. Elden Ring, bad thing is that while technically, yes, we do explore the castles and stuff of that nature, there are certain parts that feel closed off from us, you know? Like, we can't access the other half of the castle. We can only access half of the castle because, well, if you were to explore the other half, what else could you put in there, you know? It's one of those, like, open linear type things, and so instead of making a full-on huge castle and kingdom to explore, you feel like, oh, well, to get a little bit more freedom out of it, let's explore an entire world. And that is big. That is big. But I want to be able to explore every square inch of a castle. Being able to explore it to its fullest, find the individual rooms and stuff like that, from the dungeons to the servants' quarters to the actual throne room itself, the gardens, just every single part of the castle itself, and kind of learn what was going on in that kingdom and stuff like that. And while that is cool on its own, that is cool, I love that, it's more about what is inside this so-called castle. You know, what is inside this castle that makes it that you want to explore every square inch. And this is why Elden Ring is the best game thus far, is that every square inch of land that you explore has something in it. There's either a unique item that you can use, there's unique armor and weapons, there's even a boss at the end of each area. There's like dozens of different types of bosses. And there's like almost 100 bosses in total. All of them different in various ways. Certain ones are teamed up with another form of boss, which makes it either slightly difficult or slightly challenging, depending. You know, it's one of those things where it's like the way they've done it was brilliant. But of course it works in that realm. What I want is to be able to explore this castle and fight off against 100 bosses, or more specifically 100 demons, or 100 different demons, or something like that. And I've got this ideal synopsis, if you will. And if you'll allow me to explain the story a little bit, you'll get an idea of where this ideal is coming from and stuff like that. So the ideal is this, is that the kingdom in which it sets in, what it's based around and stuff like that, the kingdom itself, was very flourished, very, very large in prosperity, very fortunate, you know. And that's only because they've always praised the gods that have fortunate them. But they never praised one particular god, and that is death itself. And it's kind of interesting because in the real world, we look at death as an evil entity. And partially that is kind of true to some extent, but death is a natural form of life, you know? You born, you live, and then you die. Death is often overshadowed. Death is often overlooked. And because of that, death can be seen as like a jealous god. And so as a jealous god, we fear of what it could possibly bring up. And so I want to bring up a synopsis in which where death, the Grim Reaper, death itself, wants to invade this castle because of their unfortunate least dedication to death itself. It wants to summon up all the hordes of demons into the kingdom itself and practically destroy it. Take everything that's in it and stuff like that. And while all the people and all of its inhabitants are almost practically dead to a certain degree, there lies only one soldier that survived, one known knight, and that is you. As the player, as the knight, you are to survive the castle and defeat all 100 demons in order to get all the way up to the Grim Reaper himself. It sounds traditional and mythly, but not to this scale, if you get where I'm saying at. Again, like I said, we've often come close, but we've never gone to the overarching expansion and stuff like that. And so some people probably say Castlevania Symphony of the Night would be a perfect example. And partially that is true, but that is a 2D field. I want to be able to have a 3D field of the castle, you know, being able to explore the castle, being able to explore every inch of land in that kingdom that castle surrounds itself in and stuff. I want to be able to have that. And in every possible area that you explore in this castle, you will be able to fight a different boss altogether. A different kind of boss, whether it be somewhat human size or over large size. You know, when you think about the fantasy genre, the way they design these castles, they're large, they're huge. I mean, the hallways are huge, the rooms are somewhat big and stuff like that. You could do something with this ideal. You could do something with this ideal arch. You know what I mean? It only makes sense. Why not make the castle bigger? Why not have it to where each possible corridor has a boss that you have to encounter and fight? And one other thing I want to bring up, and that's why I bring up Blood Would Tell, and that is that when you start the game, you are naked. All that's left is your boxer shorts. So this kind of gets a small little caveat ideal from Ghosts of Goblins, but that is literally your starting point. Your starting point is literally just your boxer short. You have no armors, you have no weapons, nothing. You're fighting with your fists. Now, naturally, of course, as you fight the first official boss, which is like a random skeleton soldier or something like that, you fight him and you beat him, you'll get a weapon. That weapon could be a dagger or a small sword or something like that. And of course, as you continue on to the main gates of the castle, because you're kind of stuck in the dungeon at the moment, assumably thought to be dead or whatever, but you slowly scale your way up and you encounter about 2 or 3 bosses in, and you get armor pieces. of various difference of armor pieces that automatically attach to your character. Now, I want to kind of bring this ideal because, again, Blood Would Tell was amazing. I love the ideal synopsis of, Yakimaru was human at one point when he was a baby, but the demons took 48 different body parts from him. And so he's out fighting against the 48 demons that stole his body parts. What I want to create is kind of build that ideal synopsis in which where the demons took this one knight's armor and just separated among the other demons themselves. Now, the other demons will have different varieties of items and weapons, but we'll get to that in just a sec. But I want to introduce the ideal synopsis of each individual armor piece, like the chainmail armor, there's so many different armor pieces, and each one's called something different entirely. But just to slowly see your knight character slowly building the armor, and thus slowly building up his stats, building up his defense. Some may increase his resistance to certain elements and stuff of that nature. Overall, you're basically getting stronger in terms of endurance in order to take on the stronger demons that lay deep into the castle. Now, of course, the main door itself that leads to the Grim Reaper is locked. After 2 or 3 bosses, you'll eventually find the main gate where it leads straight to the Reaper itself. But the Reaper has it locked tight behind a certain number of keys. Let's say, for example, I probably wanted to say 7 keys. That seems like a generic number, but 7 keys. There are 7 key bosses that you have to fight in order to get those 7 keys, to unlock it. So in other words, you scour all over the castle, all over the kingdom, in order to try to find the 7 keys to unlock the gate to get to the Grim Reaper himself. Now, ideally, you could run straight through the game after the 3 bosses, find the other 7 big bosses that have these different keys, and get to the Reaper. You could do that ideally, if you wanted to. But that's obviously if you wanted to challenge yourself, speedrun it or whatever. What if you wanted to explore every part of the kingdom, every part of the castle, every single square inch? You would fight numerous of different bosses, numerous of different demons, and each one contains a piece of armor or weapon that you can attach yourself and use throughout the game. Like, you'll fight one demon and it may have a crossbow. You might fight another demon and it will contain one of your anklets or whatever. You can find another boss and it will have a different kind of weapon, whether it be a spear or a greatsword. Again, you're exploring the area, but you're getting more and more gear, more and more equipment and stuff of that nature. Stuff to build your character up more and more. And I think that would be a really cool ideal to see. I want to be able to have that ideal put together. But there is one more little effect that I want to create for the game. Now, the base game itself, that's basically what it is. You play as a lone knight trying to survive the kingdom that got destroyed because of the Grim Reaper and his minions of darkness, the demons themselves. And you fight the demons in order to reclaim pieces of your armor and gear and weapon, and eventually find the 7 keys to fight against the Grim Reaper. But that's the base game. What all could we get after we beat the game? Well, after numerous of modders over the years, there's been a trend going on known as item randomizers. I've been seeing this especially in, say, Dark Souls. Definitely Kingdom Hearts, surprisingly. I didn't think Kingdom Hearts would have an item generator, but some of them are actually unique. Some of them are pretty cool and fun to try to get into and stuff like that. And I thought to myself, what if we made that as an extra in the game? After you beat the main game, you can then go into random mode. And then you have various of randomness. You have what type of weapon could you encounter, what type of armor, the keys themselves. Or, even better, randomized bosses. Yes, in other words, the first boss you might fight might be one of the 7 big bosses that you had to fight. So you have to fight that first, and the only thing it drops is your gauntlet. Your hand gauntlet, your the armor glove and stuff like that. That's all it would drop. And so you go, I still don't have a weapon. Imagine how stressful that would be, just getting into a random mode and realize that you don't have a weapon yet. You don't know when you might get your first weapon, but eventually you're going to find it some way or another. But imagine every single time you play through random mode, it's always different. It's always interesting. You never know what's going to come out, except for the fact that everything is just random. From the bosses to the armor, the weapons, everything. All of it is random. I want to be able to create that ideal synopsis. That is the core synopsis of replay value. You can play through the same game over and over and over if you wanted to, you know? I mean, we all do it to some point or another. But imagine playing a game and it's always different. It's always different. It may feel the same in terms of the layout and the area, and because you fought the enemy slash bosses all the time and stuff like that, you may be familiar with that. But how about fighting it in a different way? A different way as in like you never got a weapon, or you didn't get the type of armor that you needed in order to beat that particular enemy and stuff like that, or to survive and stuff like that. You know, imagine that. Imagine how stressful you would be knowing that you were still defenseless without any of the major gears that you might have needed in order to tackle on the task at hand while traversing the rest of the castle. It could be pretty intense, couldn't it? Like, yeah, you have easy, normal, hard modes, but imagine a random mode. A random mode in which where anything can happen at any given point in time. And you don't know what's going to happen. Second you turn on and start random mode, you immediately don't know what's going to happen. It feels like a brand new game. That's what I want. That is my ideal game that I want to see. This is the ideal that I have created in my head, that I have envisioned, and I want it. I want that so badly. But here's why I think I might not ever see that in my lifetime. I don't think I'll ever see a game like that. And that is comprised of like 3 categories. One is gameplay. The ideal gameplay that I would want to see this game is a more action-packed version of like Elden Ring's combat. Now, admittedly, there is a game that's kind of like that, and that is Sekiro. Sekiro is so well in tune in its combat. The combat, it is so good. There is just one problem, and that is the counter system. I hate the fact that that's like a big thing in the game, the counter system itself. I don't want to program the counter system as like a main feature in the game. I want it to be a normal combat. I want to be able to fight the enemy like a normal knight would fight in normal circumstances. Have what he has in his possession and fight to his best. You know, I want to be able to have that fluid combat system. And again, Sekiro is kind of like that close-ish realm, but maybe more towards like Elden Ring combat, or even somewhat like Kingdom Hearts is. I don't know how to quite explain it. Kingdom Hearts 1 is the perfect example to explain that perfect-esque combat, in my personal opinion. But it can be somewhat finely tuned, given how, if it can be done right, you know? Again, I wanted to have a 3D field, being able to have that type of combat. And the problem is that we get close, but we never get it fully really good. You know what I mean? Like, it's not really like gripping on edge perfect. You know, it's just one of those things where it's like, if you were to give it just to anyone, they wouldn't do it as justice. But given that idealization, I want to have that perfect combat feel. You know what I mean? And to me, that would be the best way to do it. The second criteria problem is creative freedom. Now, regardless of where you think in terms of the game development world and stuff like that, it is hard to come up with new material. It is hard. It is not an easy task to come up with something new, to constantly make a game and to create something new. We have entered in a realm where we have done every possible outcome. We can only just change it up slightly, you know. You can only create so many medieval tales before it feels generic almost. You gotta deliver something new and different in order to make it feel different. And when you've got 100 different bosses, you can probably come up with at least 50, maybe even 60 bosses on the fly. You know, that wouldn't be a problem. But then you get further into creating new demons, new monsters and stuff like that, and then you go, what have we not used? What have we not created? What have we not built? Why not take inspiration from other video games, you know? Like, let's get an inspiration ideal for Gilgamesh, or how about an inspiration ideal from Alucard, or some kind of inspiration from other games or other media and stuff like that, and kind of create like a spoof version of that creation, you know? And I know some people would feel like as if that's kind of like borrowing from different franchises, and that might caught on for like copyright restraints and stuff like that. But really, in all honesty, all you gotta do is just change it up to a certain degree and make it feel like it's that particular character in some aspect or form. It's not impossible. You just have to have that creative freedom and thinking of being able to build it that way, which admittedly might be a hard task to pull off. Again, freedom of creation is one of the hardest things to have, and is something that would make it almost impossible. But if it can be done, if something can be done, I would like to be able to see not only your generic medieval monsters or type of Dungeons and Dragons, demons and stuff like that. I want to be able to borrow ideals from other franchises, like for example the Final Fantasy franchise, maybe even the Dragon Quest series, Kingdom Hearts probably, you know, bring in all other games and their huge monsters that they have created and bring them into this one game. Like, I would be able to love to see a mock-up version of what Kirk Caesar could look like in this game. I want to have that idealization. That would look cool. That would look awesome to me, in my personal opinion. But then we have the third problem, and that third problem is design choice. I've been trying to flip back and forth between this, and I don't know if I want it to be more realistic, like how Elden Ring and Dark Souls has been, or if I want it to be more cartoonish, like how Kingdom Hearts or Medieval is and stuff like that, you know, give it that little rubbery-esque feel and stuff like that. Like, I don't know how I want that to be looked, you know? Again, like I said, fighting these demons in these high-quality looking worlds and stuff like that would look so freaking awesome. But how far could we go with the design if they were, like, say, a little bit more cartoonish, you know? Give them that little edge to make them look cooler and stuff like that, you know? Or to give it a serious tone to where they have a lot more details and stuff like that. But I don't know. I think, if I have to be perfectly honest, I'm tied between two particular games that fit into this criteria of, like, monster designs. And that is Kingdom Hearts Heartless designs versus Final Fantasy XV's art design. Now, regardless how you feel about Torch 15, Final Fantasy 15 is the closest to looking like the original art material of the Final Fantasy franchise. If you've ever looked at, like, say, sketchbooks or stuff like that of the development team of how they created these individual creatures and stuff like that, they look exactly like the source material. They look exactly like them. Because I don't know what it is, but they look so marvelous in 15. That design and detail is kind of like what I want to see if it's like in that stylized. But if I have to be more honest, I would like to see a creative side of the demons and monsters based around the idealization of the Heartless. The Heartless has a massive amount of creative talent behind them, and you got so many different bosses that all look so unique and different. Yes, admittedly, we do tend to see the same bosses come out from time to time, but not always. We always see something new and eventful. We see something creative that comes out of Kingdom Hearts. We see something unique in terms of what bosses we fight and everything. And so I feel like in that ideal world, it could work, You would just have to be careful of how you want to portray this particular game alone. This game, again, the ideal synopsis may not be as hard, but the creative talent in order to create this game might be hard to do, if you get what I'm saying. But if I was in charge of it, I would do the very best I could in order to make it mirror the way that I have envisioned in my head. It's not easy, but I would love to build something like this, if I could. Well guys, that's going to be it for this video. I just wanted to kind of throw my ideals into the mix of things, of like, what is my dream game that I would want? And I figured, you know what, share it with you guys and see what you think, you know? Again, this was something that I've had built up for a long time, but I just never got around to, like, put it out there for people to kind of see what all could be created and stuff like that, you know? But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. This is BlackCross signing off. Catch you guys later.